The skies above Xiphos 9 burned. The once pristine jewel of the Galactic Council, a world of towering spires and crystalline lakes, had become a graveyard. Wreckage from downed warships littered the stratosphere, casting long, black shadows over the smoldering cities below. The last line of the Council's defense was crumbling, and at the heart of it stood Marcus Kane. He moved through the battlefield like a specter, his white admiral's coat now streaked with soot and blood. Soldiers followed in his wake, their boots crunching over shattered glass and the remains of fallen defenders. Resistance had been fierce, but was fading. Kane had planned this assault with brutal precision, systematically dismantling the planetary defenses, overwhelming the fleet, and now, crushing the last of the Council's ground forces. Admiral Voss approached, his armor scorched from a near-miss explosion. The Council's remaining leadership is holed up in the central citadel, he reported. Their defenses are failing. They won't last much longer. Kane gave a slow nod, his expression unreadable. Then we end this. They advanced toward the citadel, a monolithic structure of polished obsidian, its towering walls marred by deep scars from orbital bombardment. What had once been a symbol of the Council's authority was now its final prison. Automated turrets sputtered weakly, their ammunition nearly depleted. Council guards, their resolve shattered, threw down their weapons as Kane's forces approached. The massive doors groaned open. Inside, the last remnants of the Council stood in silent defeat. The Elverian elder, the same one who had pronounced Nathaniel's death, trembled as he took a step forward. His translucent eyes darted around, searching for any path to escape, but there was none. "General Kane," he stammered, his mandibles clicking with unease. "There is no need for further violence. The war is over." Kane stepped into the chamber, his boots echoing against the marble floor. "No," he said, his voice cold. "The war ended the day you murdered my son." The elder swallowed hard. "We were enforcing our laws." Kane moved with deadly precision. In a single fluid motion, he drew his sidearm and fired. The energy bolt struck the elder square in the chest, sending him sprawling. The remaining officials gasped, some stumbling back in horror. "This is not justice," a reptilian ambassador hissed, his scaled hands raised in surrender. "This is extermination." Kane's gaze was steel. "You killed a child to prove your authority. You made your decision." He raised his weapon again. "This is mine." The air in the chamber was thick with silence, the kind that settled before the final blow. But then a voice, small yet strong, broke through. "Father." Kane froze. Slowly he turned. There, standing in the shadow of the shattered entrance, was a boy. His uniform was torn, his face pale, but his eyes, those same fierce, unyielding eyes, were unmistakable. Nathaniel Kane was alive. Voss took an unconscious step back. The room, the war, the galaxy itself seemed to shrink to a singular moment, a heartbeat stretched to infinity. Kane's gun slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. His breath caught, a sharp, ragged sound that did not belong to a warlord or a conqueror, but to a father who had just seen a ghost return to him. Nathaniel took a hesitant step forward. "It wasn't me," he said, voice trembling. "The execution. Father, it wasn't me." The Council officials remained frozen, in stunned silence. Voss was the first to understand. "A deception," he muttered. "They executed a decoy." Nathaniel nodded, his fists clenched. "They wanted to break you. They wanted you to fall into their trap. But they underestimated you." Kane was already moving. In 3 strides, he reached his son, pulling him into a crushing embrace. For the first time since this war began, the iron-willed general let himself break. His hands trembled as they held Nathaniel's small frame, his face buried in his son's shoulder as if afraid to let go. Nathaniel clung to him just as fiercely. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. When Kane finally pulled back, his expression had shifted. The cold, calculating force of destruction was gone, replaced by something quieter, but no less dangerous. He turned to the Council members, who now looked upon him with something worse than fear. Kane exhaled slowly. "Your empire is over." The war had never been about conquest. It had never been about power. It had been a father's wrath, a storm unleashed by loss. But now, There was no longer a loss to avenge. There was only a reckoning. The Galactic Council would not survive it. The war began in silence. No formal declaration, no demands. Only the slow, methodical movement of Earth's war machine, set into motion by a man whose grief had turned to something colder than vengeance. The Galactic Council had never feared humanity. Not truly. They had dismissed Earth as a brash, reckless species, ambitious but insignificant in the grand order of the cosmos. That belief would be their undoing. Aboard the ISS Retribution, the bridge was bathed in dim blue light, the air thick with the quiet hum of war preparations. Admiral Voss stood rigid beside Marcus Kane, staring at the holomap where countless enemy control systems pulsed in soft red. "The Council believes we'll hesitate," Voss said. "They assume we'll seek negotiations." Kane's expression remained unreadable. "Let them." Across the fleet, Earth's most advanced warships slipped into position, engines burning in perfect synchronization. Some were sleek, dagger-shaped vessels outfitted with cloaking technology never before revealed to the galaxy. Others were planetary assault carriers, their hulls lined with drop pods that could deploy entire battalions in minutes. At the heart of the formation, Retribution loomed like a god of war, its experimental rail cannons primed to fire a payload capable of splitting a dreadnought in two. Kane stood at the edge of the command platform, his hands resting lightly behind his back. His voice, when it came, was quiet. "Commence strike." On the outer rim of Galactic Council space, a fortress world known as Velith Prime awoke to alarms. Defensive batteries powered up, planetary shields flared, and hundreds of warships scrambled from their stations. The Council had prepared for minor conflict before, pirate incursions, border skirmishes, the occasional rebellion. But what descended upon them that day was not a skirmish. It was annihilation. Earth's fleet emerged from the void like specters of wrath. The first barrage shattered Velith Prime's outer defenses in seconds. Rail cannons roared, slicing through capital ships as if they were paper. Swarms of drone fighters flooded the skies, their AI-driven tactics overwhelming traditional defenses. On the ground, the planetary shield flickered under the relentless assault, its integrity weakening with every passing second. Within the hour, the fortress world fell. There were no survivors. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, their grand chamber now a place of panic rather than order. Holograms flickered erratically as high-ranking officials from dozens of civilizations barked over one another. The Elvarian elder, who had once pronounced Nathaniel Kane's death sentence with such certainty, now curled his mandibles in unease. "They have violated every interstellar treaty," hissed the reptilian ambassador. "This is an act of war." "They are retaliating for the execution," another alien snarled. "We should have foreseen this." An Andari senator, her bioluminescent tendrils shifting in distress, turned to the gathered officials. Humanity was never to be underestimated. Their history speaks of empires forged in blood, wars that reshaped their world time and time again. And now they come for us. A deep voice cut through the noise. "Then we must respond in kind." The chamber turned to the speaker, Supreme Chancellor Auric of the Vrathian Dominion. A towering figure of plated armor and cold calculation, he had long been a voice of power among the Council. "Earth seeks vengeance," Auric grumbled. "They believe we are weak. We will remind them that the Council is the might of the galaxy." And so, fleets were assembled. Warships that had not seen combat in centuries were deployed. The Council gathered its armies, confident that their sheer numbers would overwhelm the upstart species. They had made a second mistake. Marcus Kane did not wage war like the Council. He did not send soldiers to die for political posturing. He did not engage in drawn-out battles of attrition. He struck with precision, with absolute brutality, with the calculated efficiency of a man who had nothing left to lose. The first retaliation came at the Zenthri relay station, a crucial communications hub. The Council had stationed an entire battle group there, believing it to be an impenetrable position. Kane's fleet arrived in silence, cloaked ships slipping through defenses undetected. Within moments, the relay's command center was severed from its fleet. EMP charges detonated in synchronized pulses, plunging the station into darkness. Then came the ground assault. Earth's elite drop troopers, enhanced with combat exoskeletons and neural-link targeting systems, tore through defenders like wraiths. By the time the Council's reinforcements arrived, the station was nothing but drifting debris. One by one, key Council installations fell. Supply routes were severed, intelligence networks collapsed, entire colonies cut off from aid. Panic set in. Council warships tried to regroup, but wherever they went, Earth's forces were already there, striking from the shadows, hitting where it hurt the most. Still, the Council refused to surrender. Still, Marcus Kane did not stop. On the Retribution's bridge, Voss watched the latest reports with grim satisfaction. "They're folding," he murmured. "Faster than we expected." Kane said nothing. His gaze remained fixed on the holomap, watching as the red enemy-controlled system slowly, methodically, turned dark. Voss hesitated before speaking again. "Sir, the Council is calling for negotiations." Kane's jaw tightened. "They called for negotiations before they murder my son." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, Kane turned his gaze to the next marked target, one of the Council's most fortified homeworlds. "No negotiations," he said. "Only war." The Galactic Council chamber was a masterpiece of cold, sterile efficiency. Towering obsidian pillars curved into a vaulted ceiling, holographic banners, a dozen alien civilizations flickering in solemn unity. The air buzzed with the soft hum of translation devices, bridging the linguistic chasm between species. At the center of the room, bound by shimmering energy restraints, knelt a human boy. Nathaniel Kane was only 12, and yet he faced the Council with quiet defiance. His uniform, dirted and torn, bore the insignia of Earth's diplomatic envoy. His wrists trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. He had spent days in captivity, locked away in an airless cell aboard a Council warship. They called him a spy. He called himself lost. The truth did not matter here. The presiding official, a Yelvarian elder with translucent, insectoid eyes, raised a spindly hand. The chamber silenced. "Nathaniel Kane, you stand accused of unlawful trespass on the restricted moons of Xiphos 9. The penalty for espionage against the Galactic Council is death." A murmur rippled to the spectators. Ambassadors, warlords, politicians, all gathered for spectacle. Earth's appointed delegate, Ambassador Rains, rose from his seat, his face a carefully maintained mask of calm. "This is a child," he said evenly, "a boy who wandered where he should not have. You dishonor this Council by treating him as an enemy combatant." The Yelvarian's mandibles clicked. "Humanity is a reckless, warlike species. Your people expand aggressively, ignoring our warnings. This boy is but an extension of that arrogance." Nathaniel clenched his jaw. He wanted to scream that he had done nothing wrong, that he had only strayed too far from the diplomatic outpost while chasing a drifting drone. But he saw the malice in their eyes. The decision had already been made. A side door hissed open. 2 armored enforcers entered, their sleek exosuits glinting under the chamber lights. One yanked Nathaniel to his feet. "No!" Rain surged forward, but was met with raised weapons. "You cannot." "It is done," the Yelvarian said coldly. "Earth is young. Perhaps this lesson will teach you humility." Somewhere across the stars, General Marcus Kane was watching. The broadcast was relayed to the Earth Defense Fleet's command deck, where Kane stood frozen before the holoscreen. Around him, his officers dared not speak. The towering figure of their supreme commander, his white uniform pristine, his chest heavy with medals, had become a statue. The execution chamber filled the screen. His son, flanked by 2 enforcers, was forced to his knees. A voice, flat merciless, read the charges once more. Nathaniel's face was pale, but his gaze remained steady. Then, a flash of light, a dull thud. The screen went black. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, something inside Marcus Kane shattered. A slow exhale left his lips, controlled and measured, but his hands curled into fists, shaking with a barely contained storm. His officers exchanged nervous glances. They had seen Kane's wrath before, against the pirates of Epsilon Prime, against the insurgents of the Titan Wars, but never like this. "Admiral Voss," Kane said finally, his voice carved from ice. The fleet admiral straightened. "Sir, recall Every warship station along the neutral rim. Mobilize all reserves. Voss hesitated. Sir, we cannot. Kane turned. His eyes, once the color warm earth, had darkened into something unreadable. They took my son. The Admiral swallowed. Understood. Kane strode from the command deck, his steps precise, each one carrying away a man who had just severed the last tether holding him to reason. The Galactic Council had made a mistake. They had killed Nathaniel Kane. They had not considered who his father was.